So I'm here to open this session that Veronica, Carolyn and Ang Harrod have very, very generously put together. So this is on the future of arts leadership. So we're going to be very flexible about what we're going to talk about with that, but they've asked me to get kick-started and give you guys a provocation. I'm quite nervous, I need to tell you, because I'm very, very good at ad-libbing, but I've never once actually written a speech. So if you could be a bit patient with me if I stumble, this is a very, very new modality for me, but I have some important things to say. I hope. Give me reviews later. I'm full of theatre makers. I'm getting notes after this, aren't I? So I'd like to start by expressing my deep gratitude and respect to the Yagara and Turrbal people. What a beautiful privilege it's been to gather on this land, to talk and to feast and connect. I'm sure I speak for all of you when I say thank you. It's been wonderful. I'm also very happy to see at this gathering a cohort of young, emerging and student artists and arts workers. Can you guys put your hands up again? Yay! There you are. Everybody clap the future. Give the future the clap. Still a drag queen inside of a woman's body. The presence of VCA students has prompted me to reflect on my own time there and the journey I've taken through the arts to arrive at this point now in front of you all today. I loved my 3 years at VCA. It was very much the beginnings of the making of me. It was at the VCA I found a place of belonging, adventure, curiosity, creativity, and challenge. It was a place where I learned from my peers as much as I learned from my lecturers. And I'm delighted to say that this learning did not cease when I left the campus. I've heard a lot over the past few days of the arts being a fertile place for affirming our strengths, expressing our voices, and discovering our kin. I can confirm that my experience of a life in the arts has been one of celebrating and commiserating together, exploring possibilities, revelling in collective curiosity, and sometimes salving the bruises and blows of being driven to live an examined life. We have attended each other's weddings, celebrated milestone birthdays, shared intimacies, buried loved ones, and held each other's vulnerabilities. We talk about being a creative industry or sector, but I think in essence we are a community of fellow travellers. It is an honour to walk this path with you and to bear witness to your lives. I can promise you young ones down here that the same riches also await for you. Welcome. However, this room, we all know that backstage can also be a very dark place. Early in my journey, I learned that I was both uniquely talented, but also expendable. I learned that I was only ever as good as my last gig, and that my first duty was to the art and the artist to the exclusion of all else. As a baby stage manager, I was reassured that it is quite normal to escape to a bathroom and cry out the wrenching anxieties of the job. It's good practice to rinse out the cortisol and adrenaline through tears. Just make sure there's some Visine and some concealer in your kit so that they can't see your vulnerability. Otherwise, you won't be trusted. I listened and counselled other creatives. I held space and made going above and beyond standard in my practice the price for a privilege of being allowed in this very special community. For better or worse, those are the fires I was forged in, and I don't want that for you, kids. I quickly came to the conclusion that in order to find safety and agency, I needed to seek higher ground. I needed to lead. If I could acquire some power, perhaps I could help make this a better place for myself and for others. As I progressed through my career, I slowly climbed the tree. And with higher ground, I gained more perspective. The all-powerful director was revealed to be a precarious worker just wanting to tell a story. The artist was drowning in the hustle to stay afloat, do the right thing by their community, make work, and forge a living. The producer was concealing their overwhelm, juggling the responsibility of maintaining connections, keeping the pipeline of opportunity open while wedged between the artists and the organizations. The executive was expending all their energies, advocating for those below while servicing an impossible funding agreement and answering to a board far removed from the daily reality of bringing art to life. Surviving, not thriving. It's never enough. The candle burns at both ends and the well is always 2 drops short of bone dry. Someone yesterday observed that we are abundant with good intentions, but we're impoverished of capacity. We have spoken a lot about caring for the earth we stand on. We have talked about the consequences of extracting more than our fair share, ignoring the limits to growth, and expecting resources to be plentiful and abundant in service of our own personal needs. We humans are of the earth, another animal in the wilderness, completely dependent on the resources nature provides, gifted with this miraculous force that we call creativity. We are not exempt from the laws of nature. Our resources are finite, physically, mentally, spiritually. We too have been extracting from each other. It's time to reassess and replot. Allow me to take this conversation out of the theatre and into the woods. Yeah, the musical theatre people picked that one up. Many of us saw the shadows growing longer prior to the pandemic when the sun truly dipped below the horizon. Darkness has fallen. It's okay, it happens, it's natural. But it makes it really hard to see. How wonderful to have found each other in this clearing today. When we enter the wilderness, each person shares the responsibilities of leadership. Collectively, you work together to ensure the journey is in step with nature, caring for our bodies and the environment around us. Getting to our destination to see the sunrise is a group endeavour, where we offer our talents and our abilities to the collective, and in return, the collective expresses gratitude for those offerings. We take turns answering different calls to duty. Let us band together now and plan a journey. Right now, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to forge a new path. Here at base camp, we must equip our backpack. Is the weight you are carrying heavy? Is that helping you? What will you give up so that you can trek forward? Is your grief sapping your energy? Are you blinded by quiet resentment? Will the past just not leave? Are you hungry or injured? Do you need help? What will give you the energy to share the load? What will you bring in service to others? The metaphor is that the backpack is your heart. Our objective is to hike to the sunrise place, determined by us. We will take turns keeping fire, scouting ahead, and bringing up the rear, ensuring no one is left behind. We will rest when we are tired. We will eat when we are hungry. We will pick up those who stumble and help each other climb over the rocks. What vistas are we seeking? What trails will we blaze? What instructions will we leave for those who come behind us? We have gathered together under a new moon, a time for setting intentions and new beginnings. I encourage you to, instead of seeing a clusterfuck, embrace the call to action. We are on a quest. It is in the darkness of the sky the stars shine the brightest, points of light from the universe, a humbling gift of hope and benevolence, pointing the way forward. In case you needed to hear this from somebody, it's going to be okay. And I love yous all. Thank you.
And that concludes our session on leadership. Honestly, I'm left in tears, in part because I'm very moved by your words, Erica, and in part because I'm in Brisbane and I use sunscreen for the first time and it's gotten in my eyes. I'm going to take up your invitation to walk out of the wilderness and journey together, and I hope that you will all as well. So thank you for opening the session with those incredible remarks. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are having this conversation on the land of the Turrbal and Jagera people, and to express my solidarity with the movement for Indigenous sovereignty. I would also like to acknowledge the example of leadership that is set by First Nations people who have held this space over the past couple of days, and indeed decades and centuries, and for time immemorial. Today, we are going to talk about the future of arts leadership. And I want to talk about how we get the leaders that we desire. Not the leaders that are chosen for us by the forces of capitalism and colonialism and patriarchy and neoliberalism, but the leaders that we choose for ourselves. These forces shroud themselves in invisibility, but they shape everything around us. So today, welcome, you're at an intervention. We are in the practice of resistance. I'll say it again. We must manifest the leaders we desire through a persistent and clear collective vision for change. Are you with me on that? I am not convinced. Sure. I'm very upset to be holding a microphone and a screen because those of you who know me know that I talk with my hands, but I'm going to try and do it with my voice. No, I can't get you to hold. That would just feel weird, John Mark. But I love you for it. This is a conversation for everyone in this room, so I begin by extending an invitation, a sincere invitation to you all to participate in this collective meaning-making so that we can forge a path forward together. But before I tell you how this session is going to run, I'm going to place myself in this conversation by telling you what leadership means to me, and also by telling you about the significance of this week for me. So this week commemorates the 50th anniversary of the overthrow of democratically elected governments in Latin America by military dictatorships, particularly in Chile and Uruguay, where I'm from. The horrific events of the 1970s and the devastating aftermath of the coups resulted in atrocities that are only just fully coming to light through the movement for truth and justice. It also resulted in a mass exodus of exiled people and those fleeing the consequences of brutal regimes. And that's why I'm here on this land and in Australia as a migrant settler growing up in Wurundjeri country in Naarm. So on Monday, last Monday, it was the anniversary of the assassination of the great socialist president of Chile, Salvador Allende. And so I gathered with my community to celebrate the elders of our community who fought for 50 years a practice of resistance. And to remember what occurred and to remember the struggle that ensued. And as I listened to those elders on Monday talking about their stories, I was deeply, deeply affected by how much of their stories and their practice I have lived and also inscribed in my own practice of leadership as a woman of colour in this country. As they told their stories, I recognised my story. But I don't have memories of that time. I was 2 when the coup happened, and yet it is inscribed in my DNA through the stories of my parents and my family members and my community. I recognise this inheritance in my ways of working and being and leading. I've always been, don't laugh, anti-authoritarian. I am deeply sceptical of powerful institutions and figures. I've championed equity and access in my work and always been critical of the forces of dominance and subjugation. And all of these things I inherited from my birthplace through an acculturation that has transcended time and space. And as I listened to those abuelos and abuelas talk about their experiences, I felt myself being explained to me. The question of what shapes us as leaders has occupied me for a long time. But especially now that I have been leading leadership programs, and this year I facilitated 3. So the Leadership program in partnership with TNA, the third residential for the Australia Council's Arts Leaders program, and my own culturally safe leadership program for CEOs in the arts. And I know how that sounds. It sounds like success. But let me tell you how hard fought it has been to have this approach, my approach to leadership, be endorsed and adopted and invested in by arts institutions. And the years of opposition and silencing and, yes, symbolic violence that have preceded this moment. And the precarity of it. Who knows if it can happen again? And through the course of that work, I've investigated many models of leadership. And of all the frameworks that abound, the one that appeals to me the most, and the one that I embed in my leadership practice, is that of conscious leadership. A conscious practice that allows us to properly account for ourselves as leaders, for our deeds and our misdeeds, for our impacts, and for the passes we allow ourselves. It is conscious leadership that enables cultural safety. And it's the only way we can effectively grapple with our systems of oppression, the systems that we as leaders operate, sanction, and absolve every day. Through conscious leadership, we can contend with power, our power, the power of our institutions, and the powerlessness of those inside and outside. Conscious leadership allows us to know ourselves, what shapes and informs us, what we do with our leadership, whether we intend it or not. So maybe today is a conversation about how we can consciously manifest new forms of leadership and how we can get the leaders we desire and deserve through an open and forthright conversation with each other and a challenge to dominant systems by the collective. Everyone's views and opinions, voices are welcome in this conversation. Indeed, they're necessary. We need a collective vision for change in leadership if we are to interrupt the profoundly powerful mechanisms of the status quo. And we cannot abrogate that responsibility to others. Change is only through us. So I'd like to introduce you to my co-facilitators today, and I'll get them to stand up. We're going to have many speakers today, but wrangled excellently by my beautiful co-facilitators, Angharad Wynne-Jones and Carolyn Brown. I chose these women to co-facilitate with me today for a myriad of reasons, but one, because like me, they have also run leadership programs, and I think that we worked out that between each other, we have more than 100 years experience leading in this sector. So thank you. But also because we are closer to the end of our careers than the beginning, and I think we should listen to those who are older and wiser than ourselves. And also because I know them to be people who practice a form of leadership which we desperately need, and that is the sharing and ceding of power without violence. And we need more examples of that. So, how are we going to run this session? Well, we're all going to speak to each other about leadership in ways that feels meaningful and critical and hopeful. You're going to hear from a number of our friends and colleagues, and we're also going to hear from you. I'm going to use Slide Easy, which you'll find on your app. And I think our friend Claire is going to give you instructions when the time is right to share our conversations and build a powerful thread of reform and a vision that can underpin some of the ambitions that we have been talking about over the last couple of days for change in our sector and our society. And we start today, but we don't end today, because we don't end until we get what we want. So, to begin our conversation and our first provocation, which is what are the attributes and characteristics of the leaders that we desire, I'm going to invite Carolyn to introduce her interlocutor and the first conversation for the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. I'm delighted to be here, and it's wonderful to see so many of you here for this session. I'm particularly honoured to be having a conversation with Merinda Dolany, who is a very proud descendant of the Wiradjuri people. I spend most of my time these days on the land of the Ngunnawal people in regional New South Wales. Merinda, you have been an extraordinary leader in so many ways. Merinda has worked in many different types of national and international organisations, and as part of that work you have never ever wavered from trying to introduce, or not trying, actually introducing Indigenous-led ways of working, whether that is through the implementation of protocols in practice, through governance, through artists' initiatives, and through both national and international networking, global connecting, dialogues, and advocacy and agency. It's never an easy road, and I think some aspects of the work along the way have been incredibly challenging, especially with the work that Merinda is doing as the CEO, co-CEO and executive producer of Black Dance, and also, for example, in her role as a fellow of the International Society for the Performing Arts. So that focus and that work that is around connecting artists, connecting work, connecting culturally driven and culturally relevant practices at both a national and international level is hard work and amazing work, and has achieved so much along the way. So it's really an honour to have this conversation with you, Merinda. So the first provocation, thank you, Veronica, is very much around what we see to be the qualities and attributes of the leaders of the future. And Merinda and I are just going to have a very casual conversation about this, and it may prompt some questions for the future or some dialogue with her later in the session as well. Merinda, would you like to... We were going to sit down. How do you feel about sitting down? Yeah, we might sit down, but you know who we are now and you can see who we are. So, what do you think around the possibility... Well, what you see from your experience and your knowledge and the work that you do are some of the qualities and attributes that you see or aspire to see in leaders of the future?
Thanks, Carolyn. So, I mean, there's so many different ways that we could approach this conversation. Are we talking about the leaders that we need to redistribute the wealth and power that the European forms of orchestra, ballet, music that dominate the funding structures currently, and are quite entrenched? Are we talking about the allies that we need to dismantle that? Or are we talking about the people on the ground, the people I see here, the people on the front line, the artivists, as Uncle Richard Bell calls them, and himself. Are we talking about, the qualities and attributes of the change makers who are working within the system to change the things that need to be changed and hold those who make structural change to the fire to make those changes? So, I think the question is inclusive of all of those things and all of those people. And so I guess in that sense, some of the attributes need to be that everyone plays a role, and someone who can see that has the ability to zoom out far enough to go, we're all important and we're all doing something here, and yes, we need to be able to change things, but everybody plays a role and everybody belongs.
Thank you. I think one of the things, I think you're absolutely right, it is, and that in the work that you've done over the last 15 to 20 years, both in major national white Western-led organisations to now driving an Indigenous-led organisation with its own cultural practices and cultural council. And Marilyn Miller was here, unfortunately couldn't be here today, but was here to represent Black Dance from the cultural safety perspective as well. What are some of those leadership aspects that you see that you have brought to bear in an Indigenous-led context, but could also be, or what are some of the protocols around or ways of approaching that in a non-Indigenous context that are creating more space for those different elements of our sector to be more open, more leading in a more open way?
Yeah, okay. So to answer this, I think I need to just go back for a moment and give some context for everybody here today, especially I'm conscious there's a lot of people here that I've never met before. And so Black Dance was founded in 2005 by Marilyn Miller, as you mentioned. And it was through a gathering called Creating Pathways, where independent First Nations dancers and choreographers came together at a time when there was really only one sort of avenue to express culture through dance, which we all know was the incredible Bangarra. So they came together to go, how do we grow our sector? And so Black Dance has always stayed true to that mandate, which is to develop the independent and small to medium First Nations dance sector in Australia. When I started in 2010, and 14. So I started in 2014. It became incorporated in 2010 under Marilyn Miller, and I started in 2014. We had $35,000 in the bank. And some of you here might know Jane Fuller. I drove to her house up in the hinterlands and begged her to come on board as the general manager one day a week. But I felt this enormous responsibility that I was obligated to ensure that under my leadership, Black Dance didn't fold, as it was very close to that. And so we spent the last 10 years volunteering for the organisation, essentially. And the only way that has been possible has been through the support of the sector and the support of everybody who's contributed to that, because everyone who has supported Black Dance felt that it was important that independents and emerging small to medium companies were also able to have a platform. So these days, Black Dance, this year our turnover is 2.7 million. We have 7 team members, and we have a majority First Nations team. We have a First Nations board, and we have a First Nations Cultural Council. And we employ dancers and choreographers to be in residency and on tour all the time. And so we are doing what our mandate was all those years ago. So that's obviously a point of pride. And I can look at Marilyn Miller in the eyes and know that I didn't fail. So that's good. But I think that the ability of us to have gotten to a place of stability means that we can look at some really interesting systemic changes around Indigenous cultural and intellectual property as one example, where we've invested deeply into this, and not everybody here will know this, but actually ICIP, Indigenous Cultural and Intellectual Property, is going to become legislated in Australia in a few years' time. So in a few years' time, it will be illegal to not have an ICIP clause in your agreement with Indigenous people, and it will be illegal to create contracts that hold ICIP into perpetuity. That will become illegal. So one of the things that we're really proud of as an organisation is that for many, many, many years, we've been investing into the way that we can build that into agreements, the way that we can support artists to do that. For example, I'll use Marilyn's project as an example, Preparing Ground. It's Marilyn Miller, Katina Olsen, Jasmine Shepherd, 3 independent female matriarch choreographers, and the work that they're making is called Preparing Ground, and it's all about climate justice and bringing Indigenous knowledges to the forefront of the climate conversation. So for the last 5 years, they've been going back to country to make this work, and the way that we've supported that to happen is that they work with their knowledge keepers, and there is a whole system, a very complex, but it's not too complex to adapt. Don't be afraid of it, but it is a very complex way of managing protocols and permissions and negotiating with rights holders and knowledge keepers about the way that we implement ICIP. So the ability for us to be able to do that as an organisation and then share that across the sector to our Indigenous colleagues as a tool and to our non-Indigenous colleagues as a fee for service. We haven't done that yet, but we will. I guess they're the leadership qualities that we want everybody to adopt into the future, is to go, the days of extracting Indigenous knowledges are gone.
Thank you, Marinda Donnelly. Thank you. We have run out of time for our brief 10 minutes. And no, don't be sorry. That's exactly right. But I think you can all gather from the conversation with Marinda that the qualities of rigour and commitment and respect and trust and generosity are all part of a determined way of creating change. And congratulations to you and your team and your elders and your cultural council with Black Dance particularly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marinda and Carolyn, for that beautiful conversation. Marinda, I really acknowledge your extraordinary leadership in this sector. It's something that really I look to for inspiration, and I know the incredible intellectual rigour that sits behind those words, the deep thought that goes behind it, and the incredible generosity that you have for others, and with me and my collaborators to share that. It really means a tremendous amount to us. I'm going to ask for one of yours, only because we are short on microphones. Otherwise, I'd give everyone a microphone, and introduce our next interlocutor, which is... And you told me not to do that, but sorry. The wonderful, incredible Carolyn Bowditch. Hello. Can I give you one of these? Now, I'm going to set the timer for our chat because I know that we will just go over time. So how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
So I wanted to start our chat by acknowledging your achievement, your work, your hard work that has resulted in this credible opportunity, incredible recognition, appropriate recognition of you and your work by Creative Australia, by inviting you to join the board. And a big, please everyone, a round of applause. And it's a really significant moment because when we talk about kind of infiltrating systems and institutions, there's a really powerful one that determines a lot of what happens in our sector. And I wonder if you can speak to our audience today about what it feels like for this moment, and also what it means for you in your leadership practice and what you're hoping to get from this experience of infiltration into the mainstream.
Amazing. Thank you. I want to just begin. I'm really conscious that my voice has been heard a lot in this space over the last couple of days, and I want to acknowledge the other disabled leaders, incredible disabled leaders that are here amongst us, and their voices haven't been heard in the same way as mine has. So I just want to acknowledge that. And it is a privilege to have been chosen to be to be on the board of Creative Australia. When I was introducing myself, so one of the things was getting to know each other. We've already had our first board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and in that moment, in the lead up to that, and some of you may have heard me say this, I made it very clear that I wasn't coming quietly, that if they really wanted me to be on the board, that they needed to be ready to do the work. Otherwise, I would take my time somewhere else. And I also said to them in my introduction that I don't come alone. I may appear to, but I come with 4.4 million people, which is the disabled, well, what we identify as disabled population of Australia with me, which astounded some of them because some didn't even know the stats and the vastness of our population. But I am so... I'm privileged to carry the voices of so many with me who will generously share their wisdom and insights regularly with me about what needs to happen, what needs to be done. I was interviewed within about 3 minutes of being appointed. And they said, "Are you the first disabled person on the Creative Australia board or in the history?" I mean, the organisation's existed for 50 years. I'm sure I'm not, but I am possibly one of the first visibly disabled people publicly open about my, well, very open about my political stance on disability justice and my drive for cultural equity. And so I take all of that with me. I'm excited about the conversation and about the action that can come. I've been appointed for 4 years. 4 years is a good amount of time to get shit done, right? So I've already offered to... I have questions around... it was really fantastic being in this space yesterday for the cultural safety conversation, and really I've started to become more conscious and ask questions about, actually led by our kind of many other oppressed bodies, but talking about what is our literacy in this space? What is the literacy, the disability literacy of that board? Because I go with the privileged position of, this is my lived experience. I get to hang out with amazing disabled people all the time who inform me, but I'm conscious that not everyone has that. And so I can talk about things that may just completely fly over the heads or under the radar of people. So I go with that, and I'm questioning, how do I increase that literacy and competence in the space?
But that's an enormous amount of labour to do as well. And I just, I always think about that hidden job description that diverse leaders have. You have to do everything that everyone else has to do. And then the other job description of kind of educating and advocating and being that champion for reform. And I resist this notion that we should be the ones that have to tackle the systems of our own oppression. And I wonder what you would say to those other board members and also leaders in the sector who maybe don't have those diverse lived experiences. And it's not like we're saying, we're certainly saying kind of think about your position and move aside. We're not saying disappear, but what's the work that needs to be done so that diverse people aren't just shouldering the load of fixing these kind of, deep-seated systemic inequalities that keep people in constant states of marginalisation and oppression? What do we need from them?
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement of unconscious or implicit bias that they're carrying. They need to be building the teams around them to be full of people that can bring that wisdom. And they need to really deeply listen. And our First Nations community is so good at reminding us about the significance and importance of deep listening. I think it's about gaining knowledge, and it's about it's about implementation. It's about action, and I think you and I are so passionate about. We can talk forever. You and I can talk forever, but we can talk forever about the things that need to change. But until we're willing to attach a budget to it and actually make it part of our core business, nothing is going to change.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's why I'm so interested in kind of bringing this conversation to that conscious level, because I think that often in our sector, we use the, kind of authentic leadership as a proxy for just not doing anything. Oh, that person's really authentic. That's how they are. But actually, I don't really want to meet authentic people. I want to meet people who actually know themselves and are prepared to come into spaces kind of accounting for themselves from the very first step. And understanding who they are in that space, what their position is, and what their relationship is to everyone they encounter. And I, for me, when I think about leadership, it's exactly what you say. It's thought and action in this kind of considered way, listening, but also learning and unlearning, right? Unlearning all of the behaviours that we're being taught are acceptable in our communities and in our workplaces, and they're just not.
Yeah, I think... classic example of this is this thing that we have begun to adopt in the arts sector, particularly where we're really good at it, which is you may have noticed people doing visual descriptions of themselves before they start. Yeah, so that was started as a good idea by one possibly non-disabled person who may have had one conversation with one partially sighted person or someone with low vision, and it's now taken off because it feels like it's a great thing. We can all do that. It's great. So I had a conversation with a group of blind and low vision artists, and they kind of went, "It really shits us. It's of no use to us whatsoever. What is useful is if you start what you're saying by saying your name before you begin talking. What you look like, what colour you're wearing is irrelevant to me. What I want to know is what you've got to say, what are you going to do for me, and I need you to introduce yourself before you start talking." That is what people want. But we've done this thing of going, "We can do this, it's really great, I can tell you how handsome I am." But it's like, that's not relevant. But we did it, one person's done it, and everyone's kind of adopted it without checking back in with the community to go, is this what you really want?
Yeah, the
Or is this
performance,
just-
right? The
yeah.
performance of accessibility and the performance of equity. Yeah, these are, yeah, they interrupt. And I've interrupted you to say that our buzzer's going to ring.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to hand our microphones over in the spirit of this, beautiful exchange that we're having. But I want to say thank you for always being in conversation with me, and that we keep learning and unlearning together, and that's just always a delight. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Veronica.
Thanks, Veronica. And thanks, Caroline. That was amazing. Ang Harrod-Wynne-Jones here, and I'm going to be in conversation with Lana Nguyen. And for people that don't know Lana, watch out, you will soon. I met Lana on a Creative State funding committee, not necessarily the most generative of arenas. But since that time, we've had numerous conversations in different forums, and I feel like I've learnt more from Lana about leadership or anti-leadership, as I think we might hear from Lana, than probably anywhere else. So it was really fantastic to have the opportunity to invite Lana into this conversation, and we've kind of got a bit of a vibe going of bumbling conversations that are trying to test out ideas with each other, I feel like. And so excuse us if it's not a, fully formed, crisp delivery. But I suppose I wanted to begin and really picking up from Erica's beautiful image of the backpack. I'd like to ask you, Lana, what's in your backpack?
Well, definitely your friendship and support, but also Erica's leadership as well. I think thinking about that idea of being at base camp all together and what do we need to do personally and together to be able to move forward to the next stage of what's needed in the moment, I think is really, really powerful. And I think, I don't know what's in my backpack. I think I always try to think about how to be, most truthful in the moment in terms of understanding what the needs are of a project, of the people I'm working with, but also of the context and situation and what that calls for. And I think, I feel really funny about leadership because I think we have so many unhealthy forms of leadership. Even in this setting of having, a stage and multiple people being spoken to, or in our school systems of an expert teacher teaching children, or in our government systems where we sort of abdicate a lot of our power to our representatives. I think we have lots of ways that are really unempowering for us, and I think this idea of the celebrity leader or the leader who should be, you know, framing the conversation is sometimes, I think it's something that we're going to need to move out of this form, but I really want to see, I guess, maybe not anarchy, but something along those lines where everyone feels empowered in their own power and we can have these smaller conversations that feel relational, because I think that's where I find power and change. And so, it's been funny being in this conference setting because I feel like a lot of that is actually counter relationality. It's about sort of downloading information, and I wonder what are the different ways that we can have conversations that feel really relational. Like, are we speaking in too big of a number? Do we do that in our arts practices as well? Is this the idea of the artist who, you know, looks to a topic and goes deeper than anyone else and then feeds it back to, you know, the masses? Is that actually reflective of the diversity of opinion and thought and possibility in our communities? I think those are some of my initial thoughts.
That's a great backpack. We've also had conversations about time and slowing down, and I think for me that's I have a anxious response to slowing down. I feel like as we've talked a lot about the climate emergency and the sense of time running out, and I feel like I've heard you speak about a very beautiful way of leaning into a sense maybe of there being more time or enough time and how to make it. And I wonder whether you could talk about your relationship with time and how you see that as a disruptor maybe.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of the biggest questions I have, how to spend time and how we can make more time together. Or maybe not make more time, but spend our time in the way that it relates to our values and what we care about. Because I feel like a lot of the way that we structure our work or structure ways of coming together are very short and truncated and fragmented. And, you know, in the panel before we were speaking about wakes and how they used to go for a month. And when you think about grief as a process, it takes so much longer than that, but we try and do it in these like short few hours. And so what are the ways that we can reconstitute the ways that we organise together? Because time is an agreement between you and me. We agree to decide that it's 2:00, and, you know, I guess we can sort of talk about it in terms of the sun and the moon and all of those things, but, you know, I think there are so many creative decisions that we can make in terms of our time. And I think also when things feel really urgent, and they definitely do, particularly when we're thinking about the climate crisis, it's almost too urgent to rush, because I think we have so many biases and ways of working that are really unhealthy and actually create the climate crisis. So this idea of like response in a really quick way could actually be antithetical to what we need to bring to the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the work that you and Aliki are doing in A Climate for Art, if people haven't heard about that, look that up. It's a great divestment campaign and a set of tools for us all to engage with. But also there's the project of the Climate Union, which feels like maybe more around understanding how we might learn together, be together, and how we might change our relationship to time. So certainly when I've observed you and Aliki working, one of the things that on our first meeting they shared a principle of working in place. So we met, and I'm used to like typical producer mode of coming away with a to-do list that feels exhausting before I've even, put it in the diary. But there was this great, simple methodology of working in place. So let's have a meal together. Let's do the work around the kitchen table. Let's enjoy each other's company and get the work done. And it seems simple, and I was sort of amazed that I haven't been doing it more. But certainly that has been something in terms of the way that I see you and Aliki working that really tries to, I think, find and make space in what we know is a pretty commodified, capitalised process. And I wonder whether there are other ways that you want to share around how to turn that need into desire, to turn that requirement that we have to change everything that we do in every way, but to make that driven by love and desire.
Yeah, I feel like when, for example, if Aliki and I have a rule that if we're really tired or if we're really hungry, we just stop work. We don't push through the limits of our body, and partially that's because it's a large philosophical underpinning of the project. If we're going to talk about climate and slowing down and, you know, listening to First Nations knowledge as well, like all of those things are asking for us to not go beyond the limits. Don't go beyond the limits of your body, don't go beyond the limits of the planet. And I think, yeah, there's actually a lot of sickness in the industry of people over, you know, Erica crying in the bathrooms, or, you know, not attending to lots of the things that we need to deal with emotionally to be able to speak truthfully to the moment and to be able to make art that actually is really meaningful and truthful to ourselves and in relation with other people, because we can't do that well if we are burnt out, and we can't actually, you know, if we don't have the resources to be able to hold care for other people, it's just going to, like, it's going to go the wrong way. And I think we know that when we repress those things, or when we, you know, don't deal with the things that are in front of us, they come out in different ways. And I think, you know, one of the biggest things that we could do for the climate crisis, I think, is to slow down and listen to what we need really truthfully, which is a very, very hard thing to do. And it takes a lot of grit, and it also can sometimes feel indulgent because of so many of the biases that we have in our head from capitalism. But yeah, I think it's one of the most important things. So when Aliki and I can really truthfully engage with where we are emotionally, physically, we know that we can then do our best work, and that's to think clearly and in response to the situation. Yeah.
Thank you, Lana. They're beautiful, wise words.
Thank you, Lana and Harrod. I keep looking at my phone and looking at the time and listening to your words, Lana, about how we can never be out of time. So we're just going to keep going. Even though we started late, we're just going to meander through the rest of the session. But I'm going to make a little change to our plans, and Harrod, I told Carolyn about it already, because I don't want to run out of time for this panel. So I'm sorry that I won't come to you just yet, but I will. I do want to make time, though, for this incredible group of people to come and be in conversation with me and each other. And I'm going to invite Samira, Bridget, John Mark and Priya to come and join me. And we're going to have to find some microphones. All right, hand me the microphone.
All right, go on.
Oh, come up. So, okay. We got 10 minutes and a big question. So, if we're going to get to these desired forms of leadership, if we're going to transform and see the leaders that we desire in our future time, what has to change now to get there? And John Mark, I'm giving you the microphone back because you are going to start us off.
What has to change now for us to get there? We need to, the leaders that are in position already, need to relinquish this this need for relevance, I loved what Carolyn was saying about 4 years is a great amount of time to make change. Let's not overstay our welcome. Let's make the change, have goals of where we're going to, and if we don't get there, but we've moved the needle a little bit, fantastic. Step aside. Let's let some other leaders have a chance to try things. Oh, do I have to say that all again? Do you all get it? Okay, cool. Great. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Yeah.
Shall we share? I love that. I think what you're talking about is what I call intentional leaving. I want that to take off in the sector. Intentional leaving. Tweet about it. You know, we've had quiet quitting or something, whatever. Let's have intentional leaving, which is actually, we all leave our jobs, but we never leave intentionally in the sense that we think about what we're leaving behind. And how do we make that transition in ways that embed certain intentions, whether it's around diversity, which I think is very important, but don't just leave your job. You know, construct your leaving in an intentional way and hand the baton over deliberately to those that need that door, open. Don't you reckon?
Absolutely. Oh, it's louder. Intentional leaving. I love that. I was listening to Lana as well, and understand that leadership is a tricky word, and and language is important, and that there are nuances that come with different communities, and that leadership isn't always what you expect it to be, or my relationship with it is different. And when I'm thrust into these positions, or when you expect something of me, don't expect that it's going to be exactly what you need it to be, or what you want it to be, or I'm not always going to push your agenda. It's about leading on our terms.
Nice, I like it. Samira and Bridget, I know you're coming as a duo from the VCA, but we want to hear from both of you. Who wants to go first?
When thinking about leadership, for me, obviously, my experience in this industry has just been institutional as a student. But when I think of what would make good leadership is just listening, and listening to what people need, and how just that act alone isn't enough. You need to actually follow through with what people's needs are, because as Carolyn and Maddie said yesterday, it's not a preference, it's a need. And that you have all these diverse voices and minds that come into this room, and they can't all fit with the rigid structure that's tradition. And if anything, that's just more detrimental than beneficial. And it's something that our cohort, I think, have seen over these past 3 years. And I think we always just want to talk. We want to tell people things. We don't want the fear and the vulnerability to be heightened. We want to be respected. So we're not scared to go into this industry. So we know that there are people beyond the walls of the institution that will listen and do care.
Yeah, that's it.
But tell us more about this. What's stopping people from getting it? Why don't they get it? We've been talking about it for a really long time, and why do you think leaders just don't listen and don't get it? What's getting in the way of that change, do you reckon? Samira, what do you reckon?
Like Caroline was saying before, there needs to be constant dedication to consultation, and not just doing it because it's like, oh yeah, I saw someone do that, let's do this, da, 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 da. But actually really taking care of each other and implementing what we need, not just what you think we need.
Yeah, I mean, I just want it to happen now, but I feel like we're going to be on a journey to get there. And Priya, what needs to change to get there? And, you're in a position where you're often speaking to leaders, and what do you want to say to them about what needs to change to really realise these things that everyone in the groups here and the conversations have been talking about? Deep desire for equity, deep desire for safe systems that transform.
Well, I just want to acknowledge what you did today by not getting up on that stage, the three of you, to actually decenter yourselves and to be in conversation with others. I think that's one important step for leaders, to actually say, when I have power, what can I do with that power? And the opposite is also true. When I don't have power, what should I say to power from that position? So I think this idea that we have shifting relationships to power, and how do we use those shifting relationships when we are leaders and when we are not leaders? I think that's really key to really make that change. And I want to address something you said a little bit earlier about why do we not have leaders making this change? I think we live in a culture and a society that tells us there's only one. There's only one person that can rise to the top, and there can't be more than one of you. And therefore, we've captured this colonial mentality, the patriarchal mentality, the capitalist mentality that says only one person can thrive. And therefore, we've all internalized it. And when we get to that position of power, we don't think that there is another way. And actually, if we actually think about ourselves as living in a place of possibility and endless creation, if we do it together, if we share the world's resources, if we share our ethical responsibility to work with people who are different to us, I think there is plenty. But we just don't acknowledge it. And we're fearful. So that is what needs to change.
What do you feel about what Priya has said, or John Mark? Do you reckon that's on the money?
Chills. Yeah.
You got the chills? Do you want to tell us about your chills?
They're goosebumps. It's truth, right? It is, and it's. I'm just gonna start saying things that you've already said, and that's like, I don't need to. You've nailed it, and I don't really have much to add to that conversation because I agree with it wholeheartedly.
Well, I feel that it's really nice, Priya. Thank you for acknowledging the symbolism of what we've chosen to do here today, which is to be all together on this floor, feet on the ground together, and acknowledge that we are all in struggle together. And that's what we need from our leaders, is to be in struggle with us here on the ground and not up here, sort of positioned away from us in the seat of power, untouchable and unable to really engage with the realities of our lived experiences and existences. So thank you for participating in our conversation, particularly to our young ones. So I think, I do feel that in their hands we're safe. So thank you for participating in the conversation, and good on you for stepping up today. So I'm going to ask Claire to come up. Now it's over to you. I want you to find someone in the room that you'd like to talk to about this subject of leadership and the kind of leaders that you desire for our sector, for yourselves. Is Claire here? Oh. Oh my God, Claire, I'm so sorry. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how to use the Slido?
Yeah.
Oh, Slide Easy. Slide Easy. You're not using Slido.
Hello everyone, I'm Claire. I'm the digital coordinator here at APAF. So today we are using a platform called Slide Easy to give all of you a voice and chance to contribute to this conversation. In order to access Slide Easy, all you have to do is hop into your Swap Card app and click on the event The Future of Arts Leadership. You'll notice there is a red-pink button about halfway down your screen that says Access Slide Easy now, and you can just click on that. Otherwise, we also have members of the TNA team walking around with QR codes for you to scan. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Claire. So your task is to have a conversation with someone about this question of future leadership and pop it into the Slide Easy so that we can collect your views as well. We're going to share them back to you. We're going to build a collective sense of what is our desire for future leadership and give it back to you as a gift from this session. Okay. I don't know how I'm going to stop you talking other than just to talk over you, which I can do for a while. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so I'm moved by your words, and I want to say that we're going to share all these words back to you. May they be the first words and not the last words that we speak on this subject. But I just wonder if Angharad, Carolyn, were there any particular responses that really resonated for you from the content that people have put on Slide Easy? What about you, Angharad?
Well, so much of it, but I definitely was we need a new word for leadership or whatever this practice is. And I'm just thinking back to the session with Lana and Zoe yesterday, and it was conspirator or conspire, that sense of breathing together, but also inherently disrupting. So, yeah, I don't know, but I feel like new words, new language.
Lovely. And you, Carolyn? Any words that really jumped out at you?
To be really honest, I haven't had a chance to look at all the words.
The hip
But
behind you.
the intent, I can tell, is incredibly deep and committed. And I actually, and I haven't discussed this with my colleagues, but I'm just going to read something out to you, which has been a quote that over the last few years has been really important to me. And for me, it's very much about who you all are, the incredible vision and commitment and experience and knowledge that you all have. And the undercurrent that has come from the last 3 days, from my perspective, is how you are deeply thinking about how you do this collaboratively and carefully and caringly, but with passion and power. So I'm just going to very quickly read this. This is from Arundhati Roy, the beautiful writer Arundhati Roy. So some of you may have heard this quote before, written in April 2020. So we're in the COVID context. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and our dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through that lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. So I wish you well in everything that you will go on to do.
Thank you, Carolyn. Beautiful words. I do wish I could hear from all of you about these ideas on leadership, and I feel that we will have many conversations. We're soon to be running out of fictitious time, but there is someone I do want to hear from and ask a question of leadership. And she's nodding her head as I stand next to her. But I do want to recognise, Nicole, you don't want to speak, but you're going to. Are you going to listen to me first, though? Say that I do want to recognise your leadership and your friendship and the role that you play in the sector and the heart that you bring to this work. I mean, I look forward to meeting your successor so we can lay a path of great things that continue your legacy. But at the moment, I want to say thank you to you and ask you, what do you see in the future of leadership? What do you hope for after these incredible 15 years at TNA?
I'm really grateful to have the microphone given to me, but I'm sorry I can't do it justice because it's day 3 and I'm tired and emotional and I will just cry. And there are other voices to hear from. So, and that says it all.
That says it all. Now, no, that wasn't me, that was her. That thing was very bad. We've got a few more minutes, so let's actually keep the conversation going. Would anybody else like to share their reflections on our subject today? We're going to come to you next.
So I was lucky enough to do the NIDA Cultural Leadership course about 5 years ago now, and one of the things that I learned from the amazing Angharad is that leadership is, it's not so much about hierarchies, but leadership is a verb. And it's a thing that people actually have to do and they have to work on. And one of the other things I learned, oh, and so even like non-leaders can still show leadership because it's about the qualities and the traits rather than the position. And one of the other things I learned is that you learn so much about leadership from watching shitty leaders. And and I've seen like some doozies. And so I guess I have a question for someone, which is, how can a non-leader overcome poor leadership when they're not in a leadership role?
I'll answer that question. It's impossible to do alone. It can only be done in the collective. So find your people and fight that battle, but don't do it alone. It's way too dangerous and the system is stacked against you. Lakshmi, did you have a question? Oh, yes, I did. Or a comment?
Yeah, I did. Hello, hi. My name's Lakshmi. I'm 24 and I graduated in 2020 at the height of the pandemic in Melbourne, where the world's longest lockdown happened. And the day I graduated, I was in my graduation gown, and we'd run a campaign to try and save our theatre course. And I was in my gown and I pulled out my phone and I saw an email saying that the course was cut. And it was incredibly demoralising. And this isn't just La Trobe, this is Monash, this is Charles Sturt, this is a whole bunch of universities across this country that have cut open access courses. And we are all tired and frustrated and sad and going into this industry at the age of 20 years old. And I run a survey before I came here. But at 21 years old, right at the start of our career, 72.7% of the people I interviewed said that they don't feel the industry supports them. That's startling. I've been here for 3 days and I was hoping that whilst I have the ear of the industry, we could all together reflect on how we can chart a way forward that's sustainable and that doesn't exclude people. And so far, I found that the leaders that I've talked to, I mean, I've met lots of really nice people, I should say, but the leaders that I've talked to in this industry have not engaged, and when they have, they've reinforced barriers. I've been told, why should we hire graduates from mainstream institutions when they're underqualified and it's not our job to train them? I've heard stuff like that being told to me. And so that really does reinforce what I'm here to say, that there is this stigma. And Erica, you said this beautiful thing about meeting fellow travellers and finding the places that you found the people where you care and love and you now go to their weddings and it's beautiful. But what happens when those places have been taken away? What happens to the next generation then if that place has disappeared? So I came here, I did the session yesterday, and sadly I walked away a lot more sadder and depressed and disappointed than I did when I came here. Because sadly, the solutions that were given to me were things like, as young artists, put yourselves out there more, network more, get mentors, putting the onus on us as young people to do all of the work for tomorrow. But something's got to give. You've got to meet us halfway. And I can't go back to a group of people who are drowning and feel depressed and tell them to swim more. So we're at a fork in the road moment and we can't accept the status quo and surviving, not thriving, and crying in bathrooms, like you said. We can't accept that. We need to do something. But I realise that you are in an industry that is undervalued, that is underfunded, and you have so limited resources to be able to give us that sadly all you can do right now is tell the young people, just keep going, just try a bit harder. We need to, as an industry, evaluate how is it that we've gotten to this position? How is it that we've gotten so far in the arts in Australia that this is the state of play? so that then we can find a way forward. And in doing that, listen to and value the perspectives of the young people who are going to take on that legacy, and not tell them that their degrees are undervalued. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have. But some really lovely people have spoken today about deep listening, self-awareness, slowing down, and Bridget just now mentioned listening and actually taking action. I implore you as organisations, and with what little power you have, which is more power than we have as young people starting out in this industry, to look at yourselves, evaluate, and see what you're doing in terms of leaving a legacy for people, and what you could be doing more, and really actually take action. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lakshmi. Is that working? Yes. I want to acknowledge the courage that it takes to stand up in front of a crowd and say something like this. And I want to say that I'm here for it. I'm up for that. I'm a leader in this sector and I'm up for the challenge that you've set. And I know that there are others. Are you with me? Are we here for that? Yes, we're here for that. And I think it's really important that you've named it and we've heard it and we're going to respond. I think that's what we need in this moment, is not inaction, is not immobility and wringing hands, but actually action. So thank you for calling it out, and I'm here for it. Oh my God, that's an exciting note to end on. I was going to do this kind of reflection and we'd be like really zen at the end of it, but actually I'm feeling the energy coursing through me about the importance of this conversation and the importance of us actually being people of purpose and doing what we say that we're going to do. So I'm actually going to end and invite you all just to talk to the person next to you for 30 seconds and just say, what is one thing that you will do to respond to the challenge that Lakshmi has put out, to be a sector that is worthy of our young people? 30 seconds and then let's go and have lunch. And no. I want to say thank you to my co-facilitators, Erica, Carolyn, Ang Harrod, our beautiful interlocutors, and to all of you.